let's go to the substance of it. Let's look at the 100,000 troops on the border of the eastern Ukraine. They've annexed Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula, and here is Scott Pelley asking the president about that, and he says this. Roll it.
You've seen a range of troops massing along that border under the guise of military exercises, but these are not what Russia would normally be doing. And it may simply be an effort to intimidate Ukraine, or it may be that they've got additional plans. And in either case, what we need right now to resolve and de-escalate the situation would be for Russia to move back those troops and to begin negotiations directly with the Ukrainian government as well as the international community.
Okay. That response, you break that one down for us, Professor.
Break what down, Crane? It's just emptiness. It's just filling space. It has nothing that a clever high school senior couldn't tell you. It says nothing about what he plans to do to, encourage Putin to do that. In fact, he has already said, taken off the table any kind of military, remotely military move. So what's the point of even saying that? I mean, this is another example about much of our political discourse involving politicians is literally meaningless. It is not meant to communicate to us, the voters, anything. It is meant to create the pretense of doing something when few of them have a clue what they should be doing.
It does remind me of the response in a parody in SNL in the 1992 election campaign of George H.W. Bush, where he was in a cafe and he was asked about the economy, and he started saying, 1,000 points of light, Iraq War, just kept repeating things as if they were going to impact. He doesn't explain, as you said. He says, wanted to de-escalate, maybe to intimidate. Thanks, Captain Obvious. All right. Well, then he was asked about this, at least the clips from the interview that will run tonight on CBS, giving you a preview of it, so to speak. Not you, Professor, but, of course, the audience. What is Vladimir Putin after? Scott Pelley asks our president. Roll it.
Well, if you take him at his word, then...
Can you?
Well, this, I think he's been willing to show a deeply held grievance about what he considers to be the loss of the Soviet Union. You would have thought that after a couple of decades that there'd be an awareness on the part of any Russian leader that the path forward is not to revert back to the kinds of practices that were so prevalent during the Cold War, but in fact to move forward with further integration with the world economy and to be a responsible international citizen.
So he's saying what somebody dealing with somebody logical would want. And Professor, I don't know if you want to break this part down or if you want me to go to what he speculates and goes to Putin's history and analyzes. I can play that clip for you right now.
Well, very quickly.
Yes.
Just listening to that, how did we ever buy in to the assertion that he is some sort of eloquent speaker? I mean, if I was evaluating a part-time instructor's class, and that's the way he spoke to the class, I would recommend him to work on that. I understand you're talking to a interviewer, et cetera. We all do that, but we're not called the greatest orator since Abraham Lincoln the way the media has. So that's the first thing. This first sentence, I think he's been willing to show a deeply held grievance. How do you show a grievance? I mean, you have a grievance, right, or something. Listen, I love this one. What he considers to be the loss of the Soviet Union. The loss of the Soviet Union is a fact of history. It's not something Putin considers happened. It happened.
Yeah, well, that's the other point. But I don't understand not coming back with, which was the greatest thing for freedom that we could see in that time, in that context, and rightfully so. And start ripping what it was. Where is that idea? It's, oh, yeah, he thinks that, and he wants to put it back to, it's like somehow that would be a benign thing to do to reconstruct it. And I think to myself, wait a second, this is a great opportunity to explain what we stand for.
Absolutely, great point. And here's the other thing he says. Russian leaders, that the path forward is not to revert back to the kinds of practices. Mm-hmm. That's the sort of general meaningless statement that you get in a freshman paper. It seems to say something, but it doesn't, because what's a practice specifically? What does he mean? Be precise, as you just suggested, that were so prevalent during the Cold War. Does he mean both sides, that we were just as bad back in the day because we did sort of the same things, and we've grown beyond that? We thought the Russians had, but they seem to be stuck in the past. You're right. He should have used the opportunity to say, the Soviet Union was the evil empire. It did these specific kinds of horrible things. They lost. He's trying to undo history, and we're not going to let it happen. And again, there's nothing about what he is going to have ask this country to do.
Exactly. And see, this is what, again, people say, well, what's wrong right now with our leadership, or what's wrong? What specifically do you have against President Obama? What would you do differently? And we can go down that line, and we will. And I'm going to ask you, because you're the expert historically, and for that matter, on the subject, understanding this. I mean, this is what the wages of appeasement is about, and you really identify it. And you identify it in Obama's America. But I digress. Here is part 2 of the response to the question of what is he after. Roll it.
He said that he considers the breakup of the Soviet Union to be tragic. I think there's a strong sense of Russian nationalism and a sense that somehow the West has taken advantage of Russia in the past, and that he wants to, in some fashion, reverse that or make up for that. What I have repeatedly said is that he may be entirely misreading the West. He's certainly misreading American foreign policy. We have no interest in encircling Russia, and we have no interest in Ukraine beyond letting the Ukrainian people make their own decisions about their own lives. And it is true that we reject the notion that there is a sphere of influence along the Russian border that then justifies Russia invading other countries. Certainly they're going to have influence because of trade and tradition and language and heritage with Ukraine. Everybody acknowledges that. But there's a difference between that and sending in troops because you're stronger, taking a piece of the country. That is not how international law and international norms are observed in the 21st century.
I told a story, Professor, about how I was stuffed into a locker by a much bigger football player, being a skinny, once pudgy junior, actually, at the time, or sophomore, I can't recall. Bottom line, it was high school. And I said as he was doing this to me, I said, you can't handle verbal engagement. This is just proof that you're weak in that way. It did not prevent me from being put into that locker. And
if you
go
actually
ahead.
said that, you deserve to be put in the locker.
I know. I know. That's people.
I couldn't have gone back to my high school if I had said that.
People wonder, why did you get so involved in self-defense after high school? You wonder why.
Well,
That's great.
This one's also a gold mine of banality and just incomprehensible stupidity. Again, he considers the breakup of the Soviet Union. He said that explicitly.
Yes.
The West is taking advantage of Russia. Okay, let's see. In the 90s, Russia's at a low point, and Europe and the United States goes into the countries bordering Russia and makes them members of NATO, and then say, oh, but don't worry, it's just a defense pact. And we're not supposed to see from the Russian point of view that isn't meant as a kind of tripwire for any sort of, revanchist moves on Russia's part. The thing is to say, yeah, it is, because we don't trust you. Get over it. And instead, this trying to pretend like, oh, well, we didn't have anything against Russia. Why invite them into NATO for? NATO is a defense league. Whom are we supposed to be defending Estonia and Poland from? Norway? Scandinavia? So, I mean, this arrogance, and this is what angers people in Russia. This is the sort of thing, and I think a lot of Americans don't even hear it. This arrogance about, you Russians, you're like children. You don't understand anything. You misunderstand. You haven't grown up yet. You're behaving like a teenager. And then the next one, I love this one, is that Putin is entirely misreading the West. No, he has accurately read the West and the United States. And what he has read is that we are weak and that we'll talk a lot and we will do nothing except maybe sanction here and sanction there. But we won't even open up our federal lands to fracking, to produce natural gas and build facilities for loading tankers to ship it over to Europe, to wean Russia away from, to wean Europe away from Russian natural gas, which is the big stick that Russia holds over Eastern Europe and Europe. We won't even announce that. So, well, it would take several years. So what? It's saying, you know what? We know what your weapon is. Your economic weapon is the export of natural gas. We're going to develop every single possible field we have to generate enough natural gas and to build facilities. And it may take 5 years, but we're going to do it. And we're going to send you a message that you better enjoy that advantage now. And we won't even do that because of this idiotic fantasy about global warming and the fact that Obama's administration is enthralled to rich environmentalists, and he's afraid they won't give the party money if he does something that sensible. So again, the whole thing is just what you'd expect from a high school counselor with a wayward teenager in his office caught smoking pot in the gym or something. You know, it's really humiliating for this country to have this be our representative on the world stage.
May I read from your book in closing? You speak to the fact of recognizing what it would take to justify the sacrifices of blood and treasure that have kept us free. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but just to encapsulate. And you speak to an America lacking that confidence and riddled with doubt and self-loathing risks become what ex-Secretary of State George Shultz feared, the, quote, Hamlet of nations, unquote, afraid to act because it is no longer sure of what it believes or whether what it believes is worth killing and dying for. The doubt and fear make appeasement an attractive alternative and erode national prestige, provoking more aggression and more appeasement. I could not. There's a reason I talk about the professor's book so often, is because you can point to it, and it doesn't matter if it's radical Islam. It doesn't matter if it's the growing threat from a Russian dictator who desires to restore Russian hegemony. It doesn't matter. It speaks to the condition of what we believe, first and foremost, we must identify. And if we don't have any tie to that, well, it's going to create a vacuum in the foundation of articulating that and defending that. Is that a fair statement, Professor?
I think so. And I think history, for the 2,500 years we've had history, it shows that lesson over and over and over again.
Yeah. And Professor, do you think we will see the troops move into the eastern Ukraine this weekend?
I don't know why he would, frankly. I don't think he has to actually physically move troops in. I think that he's in a position now where he can dominate Ukraine. Ukraine owes him money. Ukraine depends on Russia for natural gas. What? Who's going to give Ukraine or sell Ukraine natural gas other than Russia? So I don't know why he would. I mean, he's getting what he wants without that.
Yeah. And he's exposing a whole lot more to talk about. Your outstanding article of the race hacks defend their industry. I'm going to post that, and I'm going to ask for an extra interview next week, even if we have to tape earlier. So that is just me asking on air, hoping that carries a little more. Professor, thank you, man. It's great to be with you.
Bet, my friend.
Take care. See you. All right, that is Professor, Research Fellow Bruce Thornton. You can check out his work at the Hoover Institute. I will post it, obviously. And his book, Wages of Appeasement, Ancient Athens, Munich, and Obama's America. Live with honor in your life, compassion in your heart. Always keep the faith in Jesus Christ. Have a great weekend. God bless.